Episode 4 of the Unplugged Stridyl podcast. Another podcast, Hills?
Yeah, we've been very busy, so we haven't had 5 to sit down and get it done. But here we are.
Yeah, so bit of a recap. We've been on the road since the March sale, I think. So we haven't done a podcast for a couple of at least 8 weeks. That's just due to being on the road, projects, both Rhodes Media side and Stridyl.
Stridyl's been very busy. I would just like to say 50 is a magic number, Dave. We currently have 50 horses on the ownership marketplace.
And 50 quality yearling options as well. Looks to be, at this time of the year, starting to see diversity in what is on the website, which is proven to take time with different sales, etc.
Yeah, we've got some of those horses that were from the early part of the sales, Magics, which obviously tend to run a little bit expensive. Don't get me wrong, there's been plenty of bargains bought there, but tend to be pretty expensive. And we've sort of done the March sale, we've done the classic sale, we've done Easter, we've done plenty.
They're all done now. We're
going for the next one coming next week, but yeah, the last one.
National sale,
yep.
Yeah, no, it's going to be good. I look forward to getting back up to Queensland and bookending the season.
We've actually spent a little bit of time in Queensland, haven't we?
Well, I think with the Racing Queensland collaboration this year, attending sales like the National sale and the March sale sometimes conflicted with either going overseas for projects, or I think March gets a little bit close to filming for Easter.
Yeah.
So, but this year it was great to prioritise, and the response as well from the Queensland trainers has really been a really positive, quite refreshing as well.
Yeah.
Having the conversations.
They're great. So we had a bit of fun, didn't we?
Yep.
Particularly with daylight savings. We went up to Queensland. We were up there for the sales, and we wanted to go around and have a chat to our trainers and find a little bit more about them. And we were so lucky because Matt Dunn invited us to his stable. Now, if no one's ever been, it's got a unique setting, isn't it? Like, it's sort of coastal, and it has a very tropical feel to it.
Yeah.
Like, I felt quite rainforesty in a way. There was loads of tall trees. Like, the stables were very open, but it was very shady at the same time. And it was so close to that beach. What was that beach called?
No idea what the beach was called.
It was only 5 minutes down the road.
It was, obviously there's a lot of properties and people training close to beaches.
Yeah.
But it was, if everyone hasn't seen it, there is a video with Matt Dunn that we've done where we put the drone up and followed the horses exercising on the beach. But great environment.
Oh, great. If you actually have a horse in training with Matt Dunn, go up and watch it work, because it's phenomenal. Like, just to go and see the, they've got the race course across the road, but then they've also got the beach where they do a lot of training in there. So it's great. We also had a little bit of fun with, so we'd gone to the sales.
Yep.
We said to Matt, we really want to come see the stables because we haven't seen them, and we'd like to see where you're training. And he said, yeah, that's great. Why don't you come for, was it 5 a.m. or 6 a.m.?
We're going there for 5 a.m.
We're going there for 5. Okay, so go there for 5. First lot.
No, sorry.
I thought we were going there for 6.
Yeah, we're going to be there for 6.
We're going to be there for 6.
Yep.
And then we'd take out first lot at 6:30.
Yep.
And then we'd be going to the beach, which was a great setup. And we were staying in the Goldie.
Yep.
What month was this?
March.
It was March. So daylight savings.
Yep.
So we got up at 4. Well, we left at 4, actually. We got up before that.
4:30.
And we left to be there for 5:30.
Yep.
And it took, a flat hour from the Goldie?
Yep.
To get there. And we get to the front gates. I'm actually not sure what that journey was like, because I had a small nap on the way.
Yep.
I was just thinking about, I was just planning how we were going to do things with my eyes shut. And then David said, we're here, we're at the gate. And we were there early because we were there at
5:30.
5:30. And we weren't supposed to be there until 6, so we did well.
Yeah,
And
I hate being late. It sometimes happens with different things, but if I can be early, set up,
get settled in.
Test all the equipment.
So we get to the gate and it's 5:30. So David has to text Matt and be like, I'm so sorry. We're actually like half an hour early. Do you have a code for the gate? And he didn't even say anything. He just gave us the code. And I was like, all right. We drove in the driveway. We got set up. And there were some members of staff there who were so friendly. They were like, good morning. How's things? We were like, so good. And Dave got out the car first. And I was sort of just sitting in the car, just getting ready to put my jacket on to go outside. And I pick up my phone. My phone says 6:30. And I'm like, how long are we driving? Like, we left at 4:30. We would get here at 5:30. And I'm like, no. And I'm looking at the car, and the car said 5:30. But then I picked up your phone.
Yeah.
And your phone said 6:30. And I just remember saying to you, Dave, the phone says it's 6:30. And you like looked at me, what? And you were like jumping up and down the spot. What? No, it's 5:30. And I said, yeah, so we left the Goldie at 4:30. We took an hour to get here. It should be 5:30, but it definitely says 6:30. And that's when I realized daylight savings.
But and that's the problem as well as you say in the car.
I don't know how long I fell asleep for.
In the car, you've got the clock. When we departed, our iPhones and our iPhones were fine because we had a podcast on in the car. Didn't look at the time, and the time on the map, the map said 5:31. So I was like, "Oh, that's fine, perfect." Well, like, I'm actually a bit embarrassed being early because obviously we're intruding on his morning. No, we're just half an hour late.
You had to like go around the corner and be like, "Sorry, I'm actually late."
And obviously the main reason of being early for setting up, etc., is always on the client's time. This project was for Stridyl, so we were essentially the client, but regardless, we still treated Matt as the paying client. So it was a little, it was.
He took it very well, and he was like, "Don't worry about it." And then that is when it started to clock onto me, because I was a racing manager in Sydney, and just like I felt like my phone was going off every half an hour because there was, whether it be acceptances or weights or jockeys or whatever. And I just remember having this overwhelming anxiety of when we worked out daylight savings. I literally said to you, I couldn't have worked here. I literally couldn't have worked here because I would have 2 different sets of time zones to go off of. And even as Matt said, they get it all the time, having to leave, because they're right on the border, having to leave horses a couple of hours earlier than anticipated.
Yep.
That would absolutely fry me. So I feel it's hard enough to train horses and to get noms and acceptances in, but to get them in 2 different time frames. However, we got there. Yep. We got to see the way. It was fantastic. We went to the beach. We watched the horses gallop, and they have a decent gallop. It's not like, we've got the beach at Botany Bay, but their beach is like, well, we couldn't see the end. We couldn't see either end. I felt like we were in the middle, but I don't know if we were.
It felt as if it must be at least 1.5 miles and the beach went a lot further past that again.
Yeah.
But how pristine the sand was, how clear the sea was, and I know it probably sounds a bit fluffy and presumptuous and probably not the right words to describe it, but the air felt cleaner. It felt like I walked into an Instagram filter.
Yeah, it was very idyllic.
So, no, but again, great morning. We put the drone up, followed them up the
We'll put this video in the show notes. We'll put it in there for the link for you to find. But we literally had Matt Dunn sit down in his stable, talk to us about his stable and how important the beach was. And they had a decent gallop along that beach. It wasn't like like when we watched a couple of them go to the beach in Sydney, they sort of go to as a recovery, which I think Matt would also do. But those, when we went there that morning, quite a few of them were actually galloping.
Yep.
And having a decent bit of a hit up, which was great. And then they all got to walk back through the water on the way home.
Yep.
And they were only 5 minutes from the stables. And then, the stables were great. Like, it was very tropical. Matt has actually got like an arena in the right in the middle of his stable complex,
Yep.
which he says he uses. And then he's in the process of building day yards
Yep.
to try and maybe train those sort of tricky fillies out of. But I really enjoyed that trip. I was very embarrassed that we were late.
Well, luckily it wasn't.
mistakenly.
Luckily, it wasn't the only opportunity for us to be on time over that period. With the clients who are on Stridyl, when they sign up, we know how long they're going to be on the website, so we try and so we allocate marketing to publicise their horses and their business. And a lot of the time, not everyone has either a media team working with them or have something on hand that we can share to drive attention.
Yep.
But we love creating fresh content. So obviously then we made sure that the next project after we departed to the Gold Coast to go to Brisbane. No, sorry, we were still on the Gold Coast.
You're still on the Goldie.
Yeah, to do more projects.
So I love Matt. That was great.
Yep.
I really enjoyed that. And I really enjoyed going to a property. It is on track, but it's across the road, obviously. So it was quite nice to see someone else's and how they utilise the beach, and especially up there in that environment. Then we caught up with Lee Friedman.
Yeah, Hall of Famer.
Hall of Famer. You had actually met Lee before. This was actually my first time ever meeting Lee, but you have met Lee before, haven't you?
Yes, when I was Michael's, his brother's racing manager in Sydney, if he was travelling horses, I think from Victoria at the time, he was travelling horses, he'd stay in at Michael's at Rose Hill at the time. Big character. But yeah, he was always a pleasure to deal with. As I say, big personality.
Well, time we reminisced over it was a horse that you sold him.
Yep. Can't remember the name of it, but before English Digital was popular, Lee had asked me if I ever had a horse come across our path in Sydney that could go well in Singapore. This is when he had then moved to Singapore.
Was it one of Joe's?
Yeah, it was one of Joe Pride's. It was maybe owned by BK Racing, possibly. And it had won at Gosford, placed
I
into...
say it was Zorro, but that was discussions. It wasn't him because he retired, but it was another one. I'll try and remember what it was.
Yeah, it was a horse that I had said to Joe Pride, like, if anything ever comes across your path, something it's maybe reached its mark, good midweek horse. I don't know what the budget is, but again...
Because Lee was in Singapore at the time.
Lee had gone to Singapore by this point, and as I say, he had maybe texted me at the time and just said, look, anything that comes across your path, because by this point, I was probably out on my own at this point, because Michael was probably in Hong Kong, and he said, look, anything that comes across your path, I would, have a look at it.
Yeah.
Fairly good budget, and it says it's
was.
for a client in Hong Kong, or it will come to Singapore. And then, as I say, you text a few of the trainers in Sydney, and one that popped up was Joe Pride when we were at the Classic sale or somewhere, and he said, was that order still out there? And Lee bought a horse for 60,000. It was intended for Hong Kong. It had just passed for Hong Kong, I think.
And I think it went to Singapore, didn't it?
Yeah, I don't think the client went through with it. Something happened where Lee...
That's right. Lee bought it, and then the client didn't go through it, and Lee had it, and he said he was a great little horse to ride.
He won. I think he won on debut, won his next start, and he ended up winning a Group 2.
Yeah.
And I think Lee said before he left Singapore, he actually sold it back to another trainer.
No, didn't he sell it back to the original owner who was going to buy it with him originally?
No, I think it was another small young trainer that was up there who was looking for a horse.
Yeah, okay.
That was seasoned, and yeah, he said so that was a pretty good, again.
Nice introduction. At least you sold him a nice horse.
Yeah, he still reckons I owe my lunch somewhere. Luckily, the last time he suggested it was Rockpool, but now he's on the Gold Coast.
We should be okay.
I think I don't think there's a rock pool closer. But I think it was good to spend time with the Hall of Famer.
So he's based on, for anyone who doesn't know, he's based on Gold Coast Racecourse. And that was great. His stables were great.
Good setup.
To go in there, it was quite intricate the way they were built. Very good use of space, wasn't it? Like, and then we went out to the track to watch couple couple gallop, and then they've got a little track that they also use right across from the stable door, which they use as well.
And I think when you chat with guys like Lee, his record is phenomenal. Maccabi Diva, Mahogany, Mummify, endless horses that have come through his hands. And I'm sure, I didn't get the chance to get the stories from him, but I'm sure Michael said he was like training from the age of 14.
Right.
I think he was up and at him before he even left school.
You're right.
And I think all the boys were all horsemen.
Well, so let's try and get Lee on a podcast and we'll try and put that straight.
Yeah. I may just have made it up. I'm sure Lee was...
have made it up.
I'm sure Lee was like training before he could pay taxes.
That is a loophole if I've ever heard one.
Yeah, we'll definitely get it from the horse's mouth in a future podcast.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's definitely do that. So we spent the morning with Lee, which was great. And then right next to Lee, we caught up with Peter Roble, who's relocated from Sydney up to the Goldie. Yep. And I don't think him and Elaine have even thought about looking back. I think they absolutely love it, don't they?
Yeah, and Rubber, multiple Group 1 winning jockey, had a bad fall that probably brought forward his retirement. Yeah. Off to a good start with training. He had a private training agreement with Sedge and Ho Stud. Then moving to the Gold Coast, I think, again, you need to go back over what he discussed, but he seemed to be thriving up there.
Yeah, loves it. He loves it. And them again, well, when we were just talking about it, he was in Ramwick, atop of High Street, and those boxes are actually quite old, whereas when, as they do with anything that's a bit old and needing a bit of a freshen up, but the boxes that he's now got in the Gold Coast are huge, huge big boxes. And it was such a great setup, wasn't it? They had another... And that was probably one of my favourite things about going around meeting all of our trainers. Yep. Was seeing... And it's really hard, right? Because we always talk about this a lot when we're doing marketing. And we try and convince... When we're trying to peel information from trainers of marketing themselves. And we always say, like, what is your point of difference? And why would someone race with you over someone else? But actually being... with those 3 different trainers and seeing their different setups, like even the difference between Lee and Peter, who are right next door to each other, was huge again. Yeah. And then Matt again was very different. I really enjoyed that. That was probably, especially as someone who would eventually like to have some sort of equestrian facilities at home. Yeah. It's one of my favorite things where I like going and saying, that's a really good idea. I might use that.
And I love peeling back the being welcomed into someone's private operation. Yep. And have a Hall of Fame trainer, multiple Group 1 winning trainer, one of the leading trainers in New South Wales and Queensland, Matthew Dunn, to have them welcome us into their business and explain their point of differences, show us how they train. I just hope that more people get that opportunity, because it is usually obviously just for owners. Yep. But really, really enjoyed our time with the guys, and it's something we're going to try and do more content of. Yeah. Very, very positive feedback. Social media, especially Lee. I think a lot of people who have watched Lee's career over the last 25 years, but really, it was very well received. Yeah, definitely.
Well, the plus side about meeting those 3, as they are all on Stridyl. So
Yep.
you can race every single one of them.
Yep.
They've all got great different variations of horses, different price packets, but they're all in Queensland. So there's plenty of Queensland bonuses going around. Great place to race. And those guys are really good trainers to choose from.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty proud of that. I'm really proud of that, actually.
Yep. And we then departed the Gold Coast.
Yes.
We got up even earlier.
Yes.
Was on time.
Yes.
And spent the time with Tony Golan.
So we did. That was good fun. That was my first time seeing that setup, actually, because that's pretty new.
Eagle Farm's incredible.
It's pretty. So when was that infield built?
Last 6 years, I think.
Yeah, I definitely wasn't there
Pre-COVID.
when I took a horse up there, any of Joe's horses up there racing. Those were, I really liked it. It reminded me, I don't think what it reminded me of, but it's almost like going to a stud farm. You know, like you drive in the gates and then you just have like different areas.
Very curated, very deliberate.
And
it's
it
good.
was, and you could basically drive around. So if you've never gone in there, that is great. Because you basically drive in and everyone has a driveway and it goes around in a big loop, and you can sort of go there and just continue your way around for a plethora of horses.
Yeah.
And then right in the middle of that, so you sort of go. So say we went into Tony's, and we walked in there, and then there's all of his stables, and then towards the back is where his walkers are, and then that's where his exits and entries are, where they sort of go in and. I don't know how to describe it. It's basically little walkways that basically get you from there around onto the track.
Yeah, little rabbit warrens.
Yeah, that was great. I love that.
Great setup. Spent the time, obviously, with the champion Queensland trainer. We just, again, had never worked with Tony, had never met Tony.
Yep.
You know, cold messaged his team. We didn't try and sell them anything. We just wanted to spend time with them.
Yeah.
And create content. And Tony was very accommodating. He had a busy morning. It was a gallop morning. We came in, filmed throughout, and then grabbed him at the end. And I thought, oh, at least if we get 5 minutes with him for comments, then we've done really well.
He gave us so much time.
Gave us so much time. And he was a very curious-minded character. He was asking a lot of questions about media, growth, what happens in other states. And then from there, he took up the Racing Queensland offer to advertise a horse. We got him up on the website. He's been, again, a lot of attention on his horses. I think if we could have multiple, I think it would diversify what he has on the website. He's got his first one up there, and hopefully we'll be going back up there this week to do some more content because we're in the middle of the Brisbane Carnival. But that was good. Really enjoyed seeing Eagle Farm.
Huge boxes.
Yes.
I was quite surprised by that. I don't know why I'm so surprised. Maybe because I spent a lot of time at Ramwick, where these boxes are double the size of that. Very airy. And I think Queensland can get really hot. And Tony, in that video, you need to watch it. We'll put Lee's, Matt's, Tony's, and Peter all in the show notes, so you can watch their bit of content that we did with them discussing their training and their stabling. And he actually said it was X amount of feet below sea level, so it actually stays really cool there. I thought that was really interesting. And then they have like well, it was sort of dark, but it was like flats or apartment blocks all the way around. And he said it's really good now because we have these for the staff, which I was like, that's just pretty cool.
Yeah.
Like, you know, if I was a young and single, which was about 16 years ago.
Yeah.
But if I was young, and I'd be like, this is, you know, you've got a little apartment, your work is right there, in the middle of the Goldie. Well, Eagle Farm's a little bit different, but you know, that's a great setup. Great place to work.
Yeah, and I can see how people like Jack Bruce, Peter Roble, Lee Friedman have looked at relocating north. Excellent prize money, especially for the fillies. The Curious program is excellent.
Well, they've even got like, you know, Annabelle now. She's even got a stable up there.
Annabelle, I think Gay's got 10 stables at the moment.
Chris Waller.
Sending a lot up there.
I don't know if it would bother me actually which state that I would race in. I think it would for me. I think everyone have a different opinion. I'd obviously really like to see it. I think that's probably helpful.
Yep.
But going to like different, I think it really depends on the horse. I think it'd be the horse and the trainer.
Yep.
For me, you have to have a trainer that you really like and you like their way of training, and then you probably have to have a horse that definitely fits into their system. I think that would be the calling for me, but I definitely wouldn't oppose to having a horse in Queensland. Now that I've been up there and met quite a few more of the trainers.
Certainly diversity in training operations between metro, provincial, city by city. It was very impressive.
Yeah.
Looking at what we have on the website now, at this point in the season, trainers are looking at how they reach those clients. They've probably bought everything that they're going to buy. They've probably sold everything they're looking to sell. And we're starting to see a great diversity in the trainers and syndications utilising the platform. We've got a few young trainers. We've got Hall of Famers, champions, Queensland trainers. We've had horses, with Gay and Adrian on there. Chris Waller's advertised a yearling on there, which has now been sold out.
Yeah, it went pretty fast.
Yeah, it went really quick. I was listening to a podcast, which is Charlie Fellows, who sent a horse down for the Melbourne Cup, which was placed a couple of years ago. Forgive me, I can't remember its name, but I'm sure someone can in the comments. Charlie Fellows and another Newmarket trainer called George Scott. Two young guys. Newmarket has a lot of young trainers coming through. And it was interesting listening to them talk, I think, to Richard Hannon, who's just won the Irish 2000 Guineas. They were talking about how Charlie Fellows, they rib each other. He's going pretty well, Charlie Fellows, but George Scott has stuttered under his own. That's pretty much how he put it. And he was talking about how young trainers get credit or deemed to get credit at the start of, there's a perception that you'll be fine. At the moment we've got Annabelle Neesham on the website. Young trainer came through and it's just hit the ground running at a rate of knots. Do you think trainers, especially young trainers, do get a credit period in which to find their feet? Because
I genuinely think it's where they come from. I think it's where they come from and their resume. If they have an impressive resume, then I would say that some people would back them on that.
Like Annabelle?
Annabelle came out of Kieran's stable.
Yep.
And she was, it was a fast and furious stable. And so I don't think at any one point anyone thought she was going to be anything other than ambitious. And I think that maybe came with quite a bit of gumption, and I think if you've got that gumption straight off the bat, then people are like, absolutely, she thinks she's going to do it, and I think she's going to do it. And Australia have this thing where they love an underdog and they love the rise of an underdog.
Yep.
And if they think that they can be a part of that or in some way assist with that, I think Australia is quite passionate about that.
Yeah.
I think that's a huge help. I think if you were to come out of nowhere, not many people knowing who you are, or if you've only maybe worked for the one person, I think that could be a bit tough, you know, because the minute you sort of step away, whereas Annabelle was a bit different. She worked for Gay, then she worked for Kieran, and then she worked for herself in a real quick proximity. There was no hanging around for years and years. It was, we got in, we learnt what we wanted, we understood the assignment, and I think I can replicate that in my own way. I think if you're going to maybe have worked for someone for a very long time and then after 15 years decide I want to go out myself, I think it's really hard for young people to step away from the limelight of their superior to stand on their own and be successful straight off the bat.
Yep.
I do think there's a grace period. I think you're right. There's a grace period of where people say, oh, they're a young trainer, they'll make mistakes, so they'll do X, Y, and Z, and maybe people a little bit more forgiving. But racing has a short memory. I don't know. I suppose there is. I would call it a grace period. However, if we haven't seen you pop up within that grace period,
Well, one of the main ones is obviously having Annabelle on the website and working with, Kieran when Annabelle was with Kieran, and then, working with Annabelle on the media side. It didn't come as any surprise that she was going to grow and be successful quick. Like, I wish I could have bet on it. And one of the main reasons I'm asking is Jack Pilkington, who's I would think he'd be the youngest trainer on the website.
On Stridyl, yep.
He gets a lot of inquiries.
He does.
He's been very popular.
He gets a lot of inquiries for a trainer who's got one horse in his name. I know he's got 3 or 4 babies now, horses. He's actually got 3 on the website, I think, that you can actually get involved in. But he gets a lot of inquiries. A lot of people are genuinely interested. He was another one we did a cool video with. We'll pop that in the show notes. You can watch that, and that was just about getting to know Jack and what he did. But he's had one horse, and it raced its first prep. It was just a bit unlucky, its first prep.
Yep.
And then its second prep, obviously, it came out and won, and it was the horse's first win. It goes around in Peter Horvitz's colours, and it was Jack's first win.
Yeah, and it was by Alabama Express.
Which was a great buy. Because, in all fairness, most people, and I would probably give this advice to whether it be syndicators stepping out for the first time or a young trainer, the quickest and fastest way to sort of earn money and to earn your stripes would be to buy something in training.
Yep.
Because you don't have to wait 2 years for it to come up. You can send it to the races fairly quickly and potentially get back your prize money.
Yep.
As well as showcase who you are. Jack actually opted not to do that, and he went straight to Magic Millions, the most expensive sale going. And he bought an Alabama Express, which, as he does admittedly say, at the time, was unaware he was going to become quite the successful stallion that he has already. But he really liked him as a type and paid a bit of money for him.
Yeah, I think he paid 110,000 for him. And when you look at it, young trainer,
it's a big outlay.
First season stallion,
First horse.
You're like, wow, that's going to be tricky. He advertised on Stridyl. He syndicated it pretty quick. He got one Peter Horowitz in his colours, took obviously a percentage in which can race in his colours. And then he had a Tassort colt that he bought for 2,000. Again, Tassort, I think he sold it. I think got a bit of interest and he sold it. So now what he has on there is a Tassort filly. It's had multiple inquiries.
What's that one out of?
Zem Factor.
The Zem Factor has been very popular.
He's got the Zusane filly up there, which Zusane's had.
Is that the island filly?
Sable Island.
Sable Island, yep.
And like Zusane again has had drifting win a stakes race. I think it got to the slipper. And the other one is a Peltzer colt.
Yep.
So I think for again, not deviating too far off it and delving into it too much, I just think it's interesting how maybe young trainers, do they get any allowances to find their feet? And certainly looking at it, guys like Jack hasn't been overlooked, and what is
definitely not
a very competitive market for a lot of people.
So just having a look. So the Peltzer he bought for 25,000. The looks of it. Then what are the others? Just out of curiosity, the Zusane Sable Island he bought for 57.5.
Yep.
And what was the last one of his?
Tassort was 74,000.
Great. I think that's a huge help of when you've got different price points
Yep.
to enter in the stable.
Yeah.
That Tassort, that's one that we went to see get broken in, wasn't it?
The Tassort and the Zusane feature in the video content with him.
We've seen both of them, and they were actually really nice types, weren't they?
I was actually impressed for a young trainer who doesn't have a bloodstock manager, doesn't have a racing manager, who's obviously trying to have every touch point in his business.
Yep.
I think he's breaking in his own horses. He's done some content on social media.
Yep.
I think it's great just seeing these young trainers willing to compete against Hall of Famers, champion trainers, because it's a brave person's game to become a racehorse trainer, and especially in this climate.
Absolutely. Well, that wraps up episode 4.
Does it?
We did. We got down. We sat down. We got it done. We've covered a Queensland recap. Who's on there? Do young trainers get a grace period? Where did we land on that? I think they do. Do you think they do?
I think young trainers do get a grace period because thankfully people give people a chance and give them time and see how they grow. I think there's always an over expectation that young people are going to be successful.
Yep.
Especially when people like Annabelle come onto the scene.
Yep.
The last closing question is, do trainers lose the ability to train, do you think? And the reason I asked that question, that was quoted by Henry Cecil when he went through that quiet period at the start of the 2000s. He did an interview when Franco was at his peak, and you need to watch the whole interview, but he questioned that there was a perception that trainers can lose the ability to train, but he thinks it's just support. You need the horses in the stable.
You do need the horses in the stable. Sometimes it doesn't matter what you've got in the stable. If it can't run, it can't run. Regardless of whatever it is that you try to do. I do definitely agree with that. I think it's really hard to measure that. It's not like every single trainer has the exact same tools, the exact same product, and the exact same environment, so you could do a solid measure.
Yep.
Obviously, we've definitely seen some trainers fall off the perch, which were Sydney leading trainers, and we've had trainers bow out at a time when they're at the top because they don't want to be anything less. And then we've got some trainers now that maybe were in the top ranks for a very long time and are now training slightly smaller teams, if you would like. I think racing is very progressive and it moves very fast. And if you're not willing to move with it, you will be left behind.
Well, was it Joe that said that he didn't, looking back on it 10, 15 years ago, didn't have a racing manager?
Yeah.
I would love to have seen 15 years ago to now of how many stables have racing managers, how many stables have travelling head lads, how many stables have media in-house.
How many stables are in partnership?
In partnership, correct.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a very different landscape now. I don't know if you lose the ability to train, but maybe the product that you could train very well may no longer exist.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're doing a lot of different breeding, getting a lot of horses from Europe. We know that those colonial sires with fast American mares are fantastic.
Yep.
That wasn't always available to people. So I think the product's definitely changing.
Yep.
And then even, we do our blogs weekly, and just even noticing when we do history into races of how they change, whether it be distance or how they're classed, and how the calendar has changed over the years. So I think the product changes, and maybe it's more they can no longer train this version of the product.
Or I have a theory that most leading trainers, 80% of it has been good business people, very good front of house, good ownership experience, dotting the T's, crossing the I's at sales. You look at Kieran Marr, who's been championing using the heart rate systems and data. That only puts more pressure on stables to start to look at that. Aidan O'Brien this week has actually quoted that he's been looking at this. It's a changing landscape. People, find something that works that 1%, whether it's having a media person in-house that's giving you the best social media content or best ownership experience, front of house, bloodstock managers. I I agree that trainers probably don't lose the ability to train it. I think that's obviously something they probably only get better at. But it's just whether they wish to diversify their arsenal of tools. Because certainly people weren't doing heart rate monitors, in-house media.
Off the eye.
But no, I think it's very exciting. I think as tough a year as it is.
Let's put it out there. Any listeners? Do you think, here's 2 questions. Do you think young trainers get a grace period? And do you think you can lose the ability to train? Can trainers lose the ability to train?
Yep.
All right, listeners, do get in touch. Do let us know. We will put them in there. It won't be our next podcast because we're about to record that straight away, but we'll definitely put it in the next one after that. We'll put some answers in there.
Yeah. Keep shaking the apple tree.
We'll keep upsetting you.
Yeah, no, I think it's good.
Alrighty, so that definitely wraps up episode 4.
Certainly does.
Listeners, thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed our ramble. We'll be joining you very soon with episode 5.